students, hope you are keeping well. Today, grade 11 geography, all right? And of course, we're going to look at specifically to the framework for development. All right, so let's get going. All right, I've taken this directly from the curriculum. You can see I'm not even messing around, so it is exactly, that's why it's a bit hazy, as I would call it. We talk about the framework for development, and here we're going to focus on factors that affect development and approaches to rural and urban development. Okay, we're going to look at those two aspects. All right, so let's get going with this. Let me lift up my face a bit. I'm not trying to make it big and just lift it up. So factors affecting development. Let's look at the first one. Access to resources and natural resource limitations. Of course, you know what I always like to do. I always like to do a baseline. And the baseline is, we need to know what is a resource and the types of resources. And it's one good thing that you're going to do here, learners, is that later on in your curriculum, you are going to cover resources again. So it's nice to see a linkage between the different sections, and you've already revised it in this section. Okay, so that's good. There's positives all around, but the baseline, what is a resource? Okay, is a supply of money, cash, materials, raw materials, etc. that's needed, staff, that's the people, and other assets that can be drawn on by a person or organizations in order to function effectively. That's a resource. Anything that is used and becomes of value for any organization to function. For instance, a factory, you understand, would need raw materials. They would need labor. You understand? They will need other assets such as machinery, etc., the manufactured resources, etc. Okay, in order to function. That's a resource when it's used. Okay, what's a natural resource? It refers to useful raw materials. Remember using the word useful. That is used. It becomes a resource if it becomes useful. Example we get from the earth. They are not human-made. Remember, the word is human, not man-made anymore. We are not chauvinist. Example, coal for electricity, water, trees, land for farming, etc. That's your natural resource. There's a good example here. Can you see it? Beautiful ones. Crude oil, animal resources, metals, water, land, wind, solar, natural gas. All those are resourceful or resources that are useful, but they are natural. So they must be useful. Okay. Let's look at the human resource, a very important resource also. What does this refer to? It refers to the people who are part of the workforce. That's the human resource. They are useful. Okay, like human skills required for production. That is your humans resource. And there's some here. Can you see the different things that take leadership training for them, research, their skills are very important. The employee, the labor force, can you see it? All right. All these things become the human resource. I've given additional examples, but I like to use some visuals so that you will remember it. All right. Can you see I'm still fooling around with concepts, eh? And of course, you got the capital or manufactured resource. These are goods produced and used to make other goods and services. So they are the manufactured or capital resource. All right. Example, you have tools, equipment, buildings, machinery. This is produced, all right? Like your machines that operate in a industry, they are produced, but they're important resource because without those machines, your production is going to be limited. Those machines help you produce those cars, etc. Can you see it here? It's the buildings and even the wheelbarrow we put here too. The tools, you understand? All those things are the capital resource. Okay. And then, of course, we go to the financial resource, the availability of capital or money. The money. Nothing goes without the money. Eh? You need the money to come in. So I went through the resources, and I know you're going to do it later on in your sections, but I thought it's important that we do cover this. All right. So bringing my face a bit down here. Okay, so why? Resources are very important for development. Now that we know the different resources, we already now start to work out their importances. Example, your natural resources will impact negatively on development if there's a lack of it. Okay? You understand that? Now let's look at some. It affects secondary activity. Example, if there's lack of resources, limited natural resources, okay, needed for manufacturing of goods, all right? Okay, so we have limited natural resources. Imagine having less iron or iron ore, and you want to actually, it's an iron and steel factory. And imagine where you have to bring iron ore from other areas. Okay, it's expensive. Plus, you may not have iron ore in your area. You may have to import iron ore to produce iron and steel. All right, so getting resources from elsewhere increases the cost, makes it expensive. Okay, so natural resources are very important. Imagine those countries that have crude oil, etc. Eh? Their transport costs are far less and they make a lot of money. Okay. And then, of course, the human resource. You need skilled and unskilled labor for all economic sectors, whether it's the primary, where you're doing the agriculture, the secondary, you need unskilled people to work on the floors, etc. Plus, you need skill to handle the machinery. And then in the tertiary sector, the services, the professionals involved in the services, and even the quaternary sector. You understand? You need people designing programs, whatever. All right? And this can be a problem also. Okay, lack of skilled labor will result in bringing people from other countries. They are more expensive. All right. Another thing is that we're not developing our people. So it's going to affect our development. All right. Then capital or manufactured. I know lots of times the word manufactured used can be capital or manufactured resource. And as I pointed out, it's the availability, improves development, all right, in terms of the capital resource, because that is the things that are designed to produce other things, as I mentioned. For example, development of agricultural tools and machinery will improve farming. Learners, you know that it may take 400 people to harvest crops, but now you got a harvester. You may just need one harvester and one driver. And remember the production, how much faster it will take to harvest. Beside the number of people, I think that's not as important as the speed in which the harvesting will be done and affecting development. Okay, you have more output of crops. Okay, that'll be sold. You produce much more at a specific time. So it's beautiful. We can have that. All right. Then your financial resource. Money makes the world go round, that old saying, eh? All right. Can be used to carry out main operations of the business. Okay. If you don't have money, unfortunately, it's a tough world out there. So you need money to buy equipment, to invest, to build infrastructure. So that resource becomes very, very important. Example, buying of goods and services, machinery, paying the labor supply, teaching skills. So that's the financial. Without that, you find that development is restricted. Unfortunately, you know, you look at the LADC countries, they may have brilliant people, but it's restricted. And you find many people from the LADC countries go to the MEDC, the more economically developed countries from the less economically developed countries. All right, and they're always lagging behind. You understand? Although they're progressing to a certain extent, it's not that fast. Okay, because it's the money that's involved. And over sections, you compared them like United States to Bangladesh in previous lessons. And the United States is an economic giant, all right, because of also the capital they have. Okay, then energy. This is quite obvious. It's significant for everything. A proper energy supply. Okay, very significant. You understand? You need it to run machines. You need it to run, whether it's the fuel, okay, or it's the electricity supply. It's needed. Example, manufacture of goods, even your domestic use, which will make people more comfortable. You understand, having electricity, they're more productive, right? Provision of services, any service, you understand, will need it. Any business will need it. Okay, quaternary services like information technology, telecommunications, computer programs. You understand? All those things need energy, electricity. Okay, okay. So bringing, and this is wrong, I should have put a G there. Bringing, I'm making bringing. All right, so it's a G there. Bringing energy in will increase expenses. Places where there's lack of raw materials to produce the energy, you understand, makes it very, very expensive. You understand? Alternate ways have to be looked at in order to bring in this. All right. Some places, if we talk about beside the electricity supply, you understand, the other energy sources, your fuels, etc., bringing from money elsewhere makes it expensive. Okay. You can just look at the thing like when it's not effective with load shedding in South Africa. Millions of rands are lost when companies are not productive. So a consistent labor energy supply is required so that production, development can happen. Looks a bit dark here. Eh? Seems like there's load shedding. Okay, but that's electricity supply, also using the raw materials. Okay, history. You have done this in grade 9 also. Okay, and you know that the past impacts greatly on the present and future development of a country. Okay, now examples. There you did countries that are colonized, that colonized other countries benefited a lot. One of the examples that they got cheap raw materials, this sounds like grade 9, which they used to produce in their countries. They produced the goods. Imagine that. You took cheap raw materials, you took it to your country, and you produced. What happens to your manufacturing? All right, your employment. Then it'll have more services that will be needed. Development, you understand, construction of technology, machinery. Okay, bigger market because more people are employed. More people are buying goods. You understand? So what happens to those countries that colonize other countries? They moved ahead. They became the MEDC, the more economically developed countries. You understand? And what happened to the countries that were colonized? They had limited development because basically the raw materials was going, not much skills were taught to the people. You understand? So they was just sitting like that when production of goods was done on the outside. Okay, so that was a problem. All right, so what happens here? It impacted negatively on the countries that were colonized on, and of course on present and future development. Not that they're not developing, but they struggle to compete on the international stage. You understand, these big developed economic giants, and there comes these less economically developed countries that were colonized. They try to compete on the international market, but those other countries are already established and they can afford to drop their prices and be more competitive, etc. Okay, so we find that history, not that these countries, these colonized countries, won't improve, but it's quite a challenge for them, okay, based on their past. Okay, so that's history. I got one here, colonialism delayed economic development. Look at this. During colonialism, all profits from the export of Brazil's natural resources went to Portugal. Now imagine the amount of development happening in Portugal, the amount of financial power they were getting compared to Brazil. Brazil was unable to develop its own industries while it was colonized. It was restricted because everything was happening in Portugal. All right. So the economic development of Brazil was hindered. Can you see? Colonialism, what it actually did in those years, okay, to economic development of some countries, okay, while the others benefited. So it's another factor that affects development. Trade imbalance, and it's a must note here, it's imbalance, all right, occurs when a country imports more than it exports, all right, it buys more than it sells. You understand? So you're buying more from other countries. Imagine what's going to happen. You're not producing as much in your country. You're not increasing labor supply, skills. You understand? Because you're buying more than you're selling. And in some cases, you're basically selling raw materials. Okay, what happens down here, guys? It limits production in a country or manufacturing in a country, isn't it? Because you're buying from other countries. So production is less. Obviously, you buy from, if you're buying from other countries, you're importing. You understand? That means you're not producing it in your country. It limits production, manufacturing, obviously limiting development. And if there's less production, obviously unemployment will be higher. And it can, not always, sometimes we have cheaper Chinese imports, but generally in many cases, the cost of the items becomes more expensive when you're importing more. Okay, limits development on infrastructure. Infrastructure is needed for the general development of the country, whether it's communication, road networks, etc. You understand? It's needed. But if not much manufacturing, etc., is happening in the country, it's going to limit that development. All right. And countries may increase exports of raw materials in order to earn foreign currency. Whatever raw materials they have, they will start selling it. You understand? Because they're not producing much in the country. They're importing more than they're exporting. And you know, it's better to produce a good from the raw material and sell it. Like if you take iron ore, make it into iron steel, use it to make cars, you sell the cars at much more expensive prices. But if you just sell iron ore, it's very, very cheap. You understand? So the material costs less than produce goods. Okay, that is scary. Eh? Look at this, learners. The red is the imports and the blue is the exports. I just took it for two countries, Bangladesh and India. All right. And look at the amount of imports that's happening for Bangladesh from India. Massive. They're buying a lot. And look at the exports is low. Okay, I'm just taking two countries. Of course, it's not the ideal situation. But if we look at these figures, Bangladesh has got quite a problem if they're doing this globally to other countries also. You understand? Because they're buying far more than they selling. So they're not developing so many industries. While on the other hand, India is production is going up because they're selling their stuff to Bangladesh. And if India is doing this globally, imagine the amount of money they're making if they're exporting. I know later on, I don't want to deal with this. Later on, you will deal with China as an export-led economy. You understand? I just want to use different examples. So trade imbalance can limit development. Population growth is another factor. Now, what does population growth mean? Is the increase in the number of individuals in a population. The increase in the number, that is population growth. You all know that. Now, it can have a negative and a positive effect. Let's look at when a negative effect, right? Why negative? In capital poor countries and technologically backward countries, right? They don't have much capital. Okay, so that means they technology backwards, they trade imbalance is great, you understand? And there's not so much production, limited employment opportunities. Okay, what actually happens here? It can create an increase in employment because more and more people are coming about. There's less employment opportunities, you understand? So there's more percentage being unemployed. All right, create pressure on government funds. Instead of using it for other development, they have to use it for social services, unemployment funds, etc. because the people are there. But they don't have so much economic power. They're capitally poor and technologically backwards. So what happens here, learners? It increases poverty. Of course, low salaries, being unemployed increases poverty. Okay, and eventually it creates a restraint on resources, all resources. You understand, whether it's financial, etc., there's a strain on resources. Okay, so that is your negative effect. But a positive, and this is related to capital-rich and technologically advanced countries. They've got a lot of capital. Their production of goods is high, and they economically advancing all the time, increasing their production. They're exporting a lot of stuff. You understand? Because, okay, it now can increase labor supply. Some countries need skilled and unskilled labor. Some of the European countries, they take many of our people from Africa to come and do many of the jobs there because they need certain types of jobs to be covered. You understand? So there's an increased supply of labor which may be needed because of the economic rich and technologically advanced. And also people are working, they will also create a market there. So what happens is people have the skills, they develop skills, they're working, more people need goods, they got the money to buy it, greater production. Can you see it? Okay, some little diagrams here. It shows you consumption increases, waste production, all right, depletion of natural resources. I'm just giving you a few examples there. Not totally relevant, but some of the things that population growth rate can affect, like pollution, all right? Okay, by development of housing, loss of biodiversity, more and more houses develop. Okay, so it could impact on various things like maybe tourism, etc. But just a few examples there. Okay, education and training, another factor that affects development. All right, it provides the skills necessary for development and usage of technology. That's a little explanation of education and training. Provides the skills for development, and you need skilled labor. You understand? You need technology. You need development of technology. Look at these people busy here. Okay, this man designing. Okay, this lady busy with the manuals and a computer. Okay, can you see it? You need these skills for development, construction, usage, everything. And education provides that. Of course, it's not just your school, but your education in skills. So it's development and usage of machinery in manufacturing, isn't it? Skills you need to develop the machine and to use it in manufacturing anywhere. Operating and designing products for information technology, like these people are doing. You understand? All these guys are doing here. They're doing it for information, computers, etc. Provision of services in financial services, banks, etc. Actuarial scientists, telling you about investing, your people in the stock exchange who are trained to invest your money. Just examples that they are. All right. And of course, limited education and training impacts negatively on development. You've got less skills in your country. You understand? You have to bring people from outside each time, and sometimes you must pay them in pounds and dollars and whatever, while our people may not have the skills. You understand? Or people in another country. Okay, that's why skills development is so important. And that is why you find government is pushing for skills development in our country, so that our people who are capable and intelligent can get those skills and do the work for us. All right. Natural resource limitations. I know it's a bit of a repeat here. We look at the availability of natural resources and its impact. That's what we look at here. And let me tell you, if you don't have the natural resources, you struggle. You import raw materials. South Africa is gifted. We've got a lot of things in our country. You understand? Okay, so countries who have natural resources available are at an advantage. Example, availability of natural resources for manufacturing. Iron ore, I need to add ore there, apologize. Okay, and my writing is getting better, the R and the E. Okay, iron ore for iron and steel, isn't it? You need the iron ore for iron and steel. Without the iron ore, you have to then, if you don't have the country, you have to bring it from other places. Okay, it lowers costs as you don't have to import, isn't it? It's cheaper. All right, so more production, more profits. All right, and that's not only these raw materials here. What about land available for development of infrastructure, farming, if it's fertile land, water available for agriculture? Of course, limited availability of natural resources impacts negatively. It impacts negatively, guys. All right, so we look at some of the things here. Air, water, soil, trees, that's in the forest, your wildlife, of course, that's important also, right? Not for just the biltong, but what about tourism, eh? Coal, petroleum, if you have all these things, natural gas, we have a lot of minerals, gold, diamonds, platinum, and we make a lot of things, you understand, from it. Brilliant, all right? And then environmental degradation. All right, environmental degradation. Another issue, learners, another issue. All right, what is it? It is the deterioration of the environment through depletion of resources. When you mess up the environment, you degrade the environment, you make it deteriorate, such as air, water, soil, you understand? Destruction of ecosystems, habitats of animals are destroyed, extinction of wildlife. This is damaging the environment. And one of the big culprits is pollution. Okay, you can see it here. All the destruction from the pollution. All right, smog, etc. Okay, you notice this? Air, water, and land pollution causes health problems. And that is bad because it reduces the productivity of our people. More money is spent on health issues. So it can damage the productivity of the land by messing it up with pollution and seas. All right. And even erosion, soil erosion can reduce arable land, which means land that can be farmed on, less land available that can be farmed on. You understand? Because erosion is eroding the fertile soil. Deforestation, removing of trees, etc., resulting from economic development, damages the soil and makes areas more prone to drought. There's less evapotranspiration, etc. So more droughts, not good for agriculture, etc. It reduces tourism, wildlife, and things like that. Natural vegetation, tourists come. In a country like South Africa, our eco-tourism dealing with our environment is great. So less development. Okay, so it negatively affects future development. These are issues that become very, very significant. So can you see how these things actually affect development? Significant factors. There are other factors, learners, but these are the ones that are stipulated in your curriculum. So in order to do this, we do need to look at approaches to rural and urban development. It's very, very important for us to look at how we develop the rural areas and the urban areas. So rural and urban development. Okay. Now, obviously, you've already done what is development. All right. It is a process of change that affects people's lives. Okay. As you've done it before. I'm just doing baseline. It may involve an improvement in the quality of life as perceived by people undergoing change. Now you've done this. Okay, can you see it? Different people see development different ways. These people in shacks going into low-cost housing will be happy. Other people may see students getting laptops, all students, scholars, and as development so that the skills can develop. So it's perceived different, but it's improving people's lives. Now, one of the overall comments is for effective development, community consultation and involvement is essential. We look at development. If I go to one of our areas, which was predominantly Black or Indian or whatever, you understand, and I put in 20 rugby fields there, you understand, yet many communities do play rugby, you understand, but it's not the most famous sport. And then I put 2 soccer fields and maybe 1 cricket field. Okay, I need to consult with the communities, and maybe the communities of maybe using areas in the country, all right, and they may say, hey, we like rugby also, but not so many rugby fields. Let's put in more soccer or more cricket fields or whatever. So consulting the people, okay, may also decide on what are their strengths for development, what can they do, arts, crafts, whatever, you understand. So it's very, very important. All right, so rural development, let's look at it. What is it? It's the process of improving the quality of life and economic well-being of people living in rural areas. We have to improve their lives. That is what rural development. And of course, economic well-being, that they have employment, they're earning better. Okay. And some of the basic elements to rural development, right? Basic necessities like getting proper food, nutritious food, shelter, clothes, basic literacy, schools, primary health care. You understand? Proper health care from maybe a clinic or a hospital, security of life, okay, and property. Can you see these are the basic needs? And also, I'd like to include the social aspect, self-respect, dignity, honor. You understand? And by empowering them with skills, getting them employed, this is what it creates. Okay, so we don't remember that. By empowering people, we make them more creative, by getting them a work. You understand? It sounds a bit like an allo lesson. It brings in a lot of value to these people, all right, in the rural areas. Okay, so that's our main focus in there. All right. Now, we need to look at sustainable rural development. Okay, something that will be over a long period of time. And this involves a holistic approach where daily basic needs of rural populations must be covered. Their needs, so that we can have it prolonged. If you know the old saying, give a man a fish he eats for a day, teach a man to fish he'll eat for a lifetime. You understand? So we're looking at the long. The emphasis here will be based on agriculture in the rural areas. Why agriculture? Because a lot of people are involved in it in many countries, especially the developing countries. So let's use that and expand on it. Okay? So I'm going to give you an example. I know this doesn't appear in the exam guideline of a rural development strategy. Now, what happened here? Okay, they combined the rural development strategy, integrated sustainable rural development program. Was known as the ISRDP. Now I say I know it doesn't appear in your exam guideline, but you have to look at examples, isn't it, to give you an idea. And what it deals with the integrating of existing institutions, planning, management, and funding. Okay, if you look at these things here, one of it that comes in, a very important one, is your capital assets. You understand? Like your financial capital, which is money. If you don't have it, there's a problem, isn't it? Natural capital, which is your natural resources, the raw materials. Social capital, membership of a community. You work together, you form organizations, okay, in the community that work together. Human capital, of course, that's your labor and the skills of the people which you need. Because if you don't have skills, you don't have much effective development. Physical capital, and that is your transport and energy, etc., that you need, isn't it? If you don't have the transport systems, the energy supply, you can't produce. You need all these things to run the harvesters, the milling, or whatever I found in the area. You understand? So those are becoming important. Very, very important. Because you don't have this, you don't have much. Then they look at the vulnerability in this case. You understand? Trends, shock, culture. Okay. And then they look at transforming structures in the process. Government is involved, private sector, how they could involve in terms of funding and improving the capital assets, which will reduce this, isn't it? If you improve this, more people will be employed. So laws, policies, incentives also. Mr. Businessman, can you come into this area? We'll charge you less tax. So all these things get involved there. You understand? So that you can transform. And of course, strategies with all these organizations like AgriB, etc. You don't need to know all that. Get them involved. You understand? These are the strategies that were developed by the government. You understand? AgriB, BEE, etc. These organizations, so that they will assist with the capital assets. These organizations, all right? And of course, what happened? After outcomes, there was more income, more jobs, better well-being of people, reduce vulnerability of these things here, okay, because they could handle it. There systems in place if there's any different trends or natural disasters, improve food security, enough nutritious food, better sustainable use, okay, of all these things, natural resources, that's NR, okay, your natural resources we use better. You were not just selling your raw materials as natural, but you were manufacturing. You understand? So you're using less, but you're selling goods at higher prices. So very quickly, this was a system, a good example of how it went off. But it was important for capital assets to look at the areas of concern, to create laws and funding, to create organizations, all right, that will look after and bring about this natural capital assets, and therefore you have these outcomes. Brilliant. All right. Let's look at urban development. Of course, it's a process of improving the quality of life and economic well-being of people living in urban areas. Now, there were many challenges, especially in developing countries. Things like rural-urban migration has contributed greatly to urbanization. Should have been an S. Okay, creating many challenges. People are flocking into the cities. You understand? Increasing the percentage of people living in cities compared to the rural areas. And imagine what happens now. You can't create houses overnight. You can't have jobs overnight. So what happens? There's a lot of poverty, strain on facilities because there's so many people using it. Unemployment. All right. Poverty can be various things. You don't work, or you work and get less money. Lack of housing, strain on services, increase in crime, increase in pollution. Okay, these are major areas that happen. And we can use simple things to improve the living conditions in your urban development areas, or we can create development strategies. Okay, so look at some of the approaches. Emphasis on employment. Okay, to alleviate this poverty, get more people employed. But we can look in the community to get employment, to create our own employment. You know, we don't need government all the time coming on this. We can set up, we're not going to be armchair critics, do things, get people involved. Example, community-based employment like car guards, neighborhood watch. You understand? We're getting people involved, we're creating and giving it to our own people. What we also can look at, using skills of the community to generate income, arts and crafts. You find people creating those baskets, sculptures, creating our own employment in our community. That is why you need to communicate with the community to see what are their skills, what are their needs, etc. I'm going to call this social support, which are like creches and daycare facilities. Okay, it supports working parents who have nowhere else to go, costs are better, and it also generates income. Food gardens can create income, because people sometimes study, and provide affordable food. You know, because later on you'll learn in grade 12 about small-scale farming also. It can do all that. And of course, environmental projects like recycling, which will help the environment. Plus, on the other hand, people will earn money. So urban development is about reducing poverty also, and about providing employment, etc., so that we upgrade people's lives. We put less strain on the facilities, become more affordable. Look at this daycare center here. These young people look very happy, eh? All right. So that's an idea that can happen. Okay. An example of this urban development strategy was the Urban Renewal Program, the URP. This focused on reducing poverty. Can you see one of the big issues? It aimed at focusing the resources of government in an integrated manner towards breaking the cycle of underdevelopment in cities, creating funds, and of course, getting the communities involved, like we discussed. Okay. And they concern themselves with the degraded areas that have historical relevance, etc. You understand? Upgrade, you remember, by the people who moved around, we created historical museums, and that was some of the main concerns. So projects have been put in place to improve the social environment and the economic, social, the living area about the people, the communities, life, you understand, economy, the money, and of course, infrastructure recovery, upgrading the buildings, especially those ones with historical value, etc. Okay, all that, an expansion of public areas, okay, facilities, etc. Okay, public transport was another issue that was improved, and social housing. Wouldn't these are some of the basic needs that we need people to get involved in? You understand? You can see here the development of buildings happening. You understand? Recreational facilities. All these things can uplift. This was an example of that. Okay. And lastly, let's look at just some brain teasers, eh? I'm just going to look at it, something for you to think about. Let's look at some of these questions. Why is financial resource considered very important factor affecting development? Right? Because you need money, isn't it? To train people, okay? To give them skills, it needs money. To buy, to build infrastructure would require money. Okay, to develop technology requires money. Okay, to get people employed requires money. All right, so if you don't have that money, how are you going to get going? So therefore, it's one of the most important things. Just some teasers. Okay, maybe your teachers are going to set different questions. Okay, explain the significance of energy supply for the development of a country. Obviously, what does energy supply do? It allows for manufacturing, allows for machines, allows for harvesters to work with the fuels. All right, it provides lights, power supply. Okay, and if you do not have these things, you can't have a massive production. You'll be just relying on manual labor. Okay, just throwing some ideas around. I know I want you to do this after this and go into more detail and discuss it with your teachers. I'm just doing it briefly. Okay, you give the full answer, so you must redo this one, eh? All right. And then, of course, together with your teachers, you'll think of better answers. Evaluate the importance of involving communities in decision-making regarding development. It's very important because you'll pick up on what skills they have, what are their needs. You understand? You'll pick up of communities, projects that they will tell you about. You understand? And using their skills like arts and crafts and the abilities in the community, you get people more enthusiastic in terms of employment, and the success rate of your development will be higher because people will like what they're doing and they have the availability or the academic ability of those things, okay, which will produce better. Okay. The importance of human capital to sustainable urban development. Okay, remember, in urban development, you need people in the manufacturing, the tertiary sector offering services, the quaternary sector, information technology, computers. And what's human capital? The labor and the skill. So providing people with skills, having a lot of people with skills will definitely increase the market because they'll be getting better employment opportunities. Secondly, they will be more sort of constructive in terms of manufacturing of goods or designing of stuff that will improve production. They will have the necessary skills to operate the machinery involved. Just a few examples, which will create development. So let us sit with your teachers. I know they may have better questions than I do. All right. So they must say, throw these questions that Mr. Dave gave me, but I don't know. But it'll be nice just to take these few brain teasers and go into more depth with them, with you and your teachers. I hope you enjoyed the lesson, learners. All the best.